There comes a moment in every person's life when their mind becomes louder than their reality, when every thought, every fear, every doubt begins to echo inside the brain until it feels impossible to move, to choose, or even to breathe. Overthinking is not just a habit, it is a silent prison built from past pain, future fear, and present pressure. But today, for the next few minutes, I want to take you somewhere different. I want to show you the doorway inside your own mind, a doorway that leads not to confusion, but clarity, not to noise, but to peace. We spend so much time worrying about things that never happen, replaying mistakes we cannot change, imagining outcomes we cannot control, and trying to predict results that were never ours to shape. The human mind is powerful, but without guidance, it becomes chaotic. Yet the same mind that creates stress can create serenity. The same mind that overthinks can be trained to think with intention. The same mind that doubts can learn to believe. Overthinking does not come from weakness. It comes from intelligence tied to fear. It comes from sensitivity tied to past wounds. It comes from caring too much about things that don't matter and not enough about the things that do. You don't need to silence your mind. You need to teach it how to listen to the right thoughts. And that is what we will do today. In these minutes, I want to take you step by step into the core of your mental patterns. I want to show you how to recognize the lies your fears whisper, how to take control of your inner narrative, and how to replace overthinking with grounded awareness. You can retrain your brain the same way you train a muscle. It's not magic, it's practice, repetition, and awareness. Imagine waking up one morning and not feeling lost inside your mind. Imagine making decisions without analyzing every possible outcome. Imagine trusting yourself enough to move forward without permission, without fear, without the heavy weight of what if. That clarity is possible. That peace is possible. That freedom is possible. The truth is this: your mind becomes what you repeatedly allow. If you keep feeding it doubt, it will grow doubt. If you keep feeding it fear, it will grow fear. But if you teach it stillness, it will learn stillness. If you teach it trust, it will learn trust. If you show it self-control, it will learn to calm itself. Your brain is not your enemy. It is waiting for direction. It is waiting for new habits. It is waiting for you to take the wheel. And today you will. Because a peaceful life does not begin with perfect circumstances. It begins with a trained mind, and once you learn to guide your thoughts, you become unstoppable, not because life gets easier, but because your mind stops making it harder. Overthinking is not a monster that appears out of nowhere. It is a cycle, a pattern, a loop that begins quietly and grows louder when you don't notice it forming. The very first step to rewiring your brain is awareness, because awareness is the moment you stop being controlled by your thoughts and start observing them. When you become aware of what your mind is doing, the power begins to shift back to you. Overthinking thrives in the shadows, but it dissolves under the light of conscious attention. Most people do not even realize when they start overthinking. It begins with a simple concern, a small question, a tiny fear. Maybe something didn't go as planned. Maybe someone said something that bothered you. Maybe your future feels uncertain. And instead of facing the reality in front of you, your mind creates a story around it. Then the story becomes a spiral filled with what if, maybe, should I, and why didn't I go? Before you know it, your brain is racing, your heart is tense, and your peace is gone. This entire process, from beginning to end, happens unconsciously. That is why awareness is the foundation of change. Awareness means you recognize the moment your thoughts begin to shift from clarity to chaos. It means you pause and say, wait. This is not reality. This is my mind creating noise. That pause alone is powerful. It interrupts the cycle. It gives you a moment to breathe, to step outside the storm, and to see the situation with honest eyes. You cannot change what you refuse to see. But the moment you see it, the moment you acknowledge it, transformation begins. Think of awareness like turning on the lights in a dark room. When the room is dark, everything feels threatening. You imagine shapes that are not there. You fear dangers that do not exist. But when you turn on the light, you realize the shadows were never real. This is exactly how your mind works. When your thoughts run wild without awareness, they become shadows. They distort the truth. They amplify your fears. But every time you bring awareness to your thoughts, you turn on the light. You see things as they are, not as your anxiety paints them. Awareness is not judgment. It is observation. It is not about saying, "Why am I like this?" or "Why can't I stop thinking?" Awareness is simply noticing the thought without feeding it. It is looking at your mind as if you were watching a movie. You observe the scenes, the dialogue, the emotions, but you don't confuse the movie with your real life. When you learn to separate your thoughts from your identity, you become free from their grip. Once awareness becomes a habit, your mind slowly learns a new pattern. The moment a thought tries to pull you into overthinking, you will catch it. You will label it. You will release it. You will stop letting it drag you into hours, days, or weeks of unnecessary mental stress. You reclaim your energy. You reclaim your emotional space. You reclaim your peace. Awareness is not just the first step. It is the step that makes all the other steps possible. It is the key that opens the door to rewiring your brain. When you choose awareness, you choose control, clarity, and freedom. And once you experience that level of mental clarity, you will never again let your mind run your life without your permission. One of the greatest secrets to ending overthinking is learning how to interrupt the thought pattern the moment it begins to spiral. Overthinking is like a train. Once you step on, it carries you into deeper fear, deeper confusion, and deeper emotional noise. Most people stay on that train because they do not realize they have a choice. They believe the thoughts must continue, that they must follow every what if until it is exhausted. But the truth is, you can step off that train at any moment. You can stop the momentum before it drags you into a mental storm. And this ability begins with the simple but powerful practice of interruption. Interrupting the thought pattern does not mean fighting your thoughts, because fighting them only makes them stronger. It means breaking the rhythm, disrupting the automatic flow, and shifting your attention long enough to regain control. The mind keeps repeating the same loop because it has built a habit, and habits continue until you interrupt them. A pattern that is interrupted repeatedly eventually loses power. It becomes weaker, softer, and less dominant. What once felt overwhelming starts to fade, simply because it is no longer running on autopilot. The interruption can be small, gentle, and incredibly simple. It can be taking a deep breath. It can be placing your hand on your chest. It can be saying out loud, "Stop." Can be standing up, moving your body, walking to another room, drinking a glass of water, or reminding yourself, "I am thinking too much." These actions may seem small, but they are powerful because they break the cycle. They stop the unconscious flow of thoughts and bring you back into the present moment. And the present moment is the only place where clarity lives. Every time you interrupt the thought pattern, you weaken the brain's habit of overthinking. Your brain learns by repetition, and it also unlearns by repetition. If you interrupt the spiral 10 times, it loses power. Interrupt it 100 times, it becomes almost irrelevant. Interrupt it every time it appears, and you rewire your brain to choose calm instead of chaos. Overthinking is not just a mental issue, it is a conditioned response. And any conditioned response can be unconditioned with consistent interruption. Imagine a record player stuck in a loop. The same line plays over and over again. You cannot fix it by listening harder. You fix it by lifting the needle for even a moment. That tiny pause resets the entire system. Your thoughts work the same way. When they get stuck, you lift the needle. You create a gap. You create space. And in that space, your power returns. Your strength returns. Your ability to think clearly returns. Interrupting the pattern also teaches your brain that you are not afraid of your thoughts. You are not trying to avoid them, but you are choosing not to drown in them. You reclaim authority over your mind. You tell your thoughts, "You can appear, but you cannot control me." That level of inner strength builds emotional resilience, confidence, and a deeper sense of peace that nothing can easily disturb. Over time, these interruptions become natural. They become automatic. They become your new default response. The moment your mind tries to wander into overthinking, something inside you says, "No, not today." And instantly, the pattern breaks. That is when you realize the incredible truth. Your mind may create thoughts, but you decide whether those thoughts turn into suffering. Interrupting thought pattern is not about perfection. It is about progress. It is about recognizing your power in every moment. It is about choosing clarity over chaos, peace over panic, presence over the past or the future. And once you master this skill, you will feel a shift inside you, a calmness, a confidence, a sense of mental freedom that stays with you no matter what life brings. When your mind begins to spiral into overthinking, it is not enough to simply stop the pattern. You must redirect that mental energy towards something purposeful, meaningful, and empowering. The human mind cannot exist in a vacuum. If you remove one thought, another will rush in to replace it. If you stop a negative pattern but do not redirect it, your brain will eventually drift back into the same cycle again. Redirecting the mind is not just a technique, it is a transformation. It is the moment you choose what your mind focuses on instead of letting your thoughts choose for you. Purposeful thoughts are not fantasies or empty positive thinking. They are grounded, intentional thoughts that move you forward instead of trapping you in fear. Overthinking fills your mind with imagined scenarios, doubtful questions, and exaggerated problems. Purposeful thinking replaces all of that with clarity, direction, and action. It reminds you of what you can control, what truly matters, and what is real instead of imagined. Redirecting your mind begins with one simple question: what is the next best thought I can choose right now? Not a perfect thought, not a magical thought, not a thought that solves everything, just the next best thought. Your mind always needs direction, and if you give it even one small constructive thought, it begins to follow that path. The entire mental landscape shifts. The energy changes. You move from panic to presence, from confusion to clarity, from fear to focus. For example, if you're overthinking a conversation, redirect your mind to what you learn from it instead of replaying it in your head. If you are overthinking the future, redirect your mind to one small action you can take today. If you are overthinking a mistake, redirect your mind to what it taught you instead of blaming yourself. These simple shifts are powerful because they reprogram your brain. They teach your mind to look for solutions, lessons, and opportunities instead of threats and failures. Purposeful thinking also involves shifting your attention to the present moment. Most overthinking is rooted in the past or future. Your mind wanders into regrets behind you or uncertainties ahead of you. But life is happening now, right in front of you, and the present moment is always more manageable than the stories your mind creates. Redirecting your thoughts to the present is like anchoring your ship in the middle of a storm. Suddenly, everything feels steadier, calmer, and clearer. Another powerful way to redirect your mind is through gratitude. Gratitude is just a positive concept. It is a neurological tool. When you intentionally think about what you are grateful for, your brain shifts from threat mode to appreciation mode. You release tension, you open space. You interrupt the fear cycle. Gratitude becomes a compass that guides your mind away from anxious thoughts and toward emotional stability. You can also redirect your mind by focusing on your goals. Overthinking drains your energy, but goals refuel it. When you remind yourself of what you are working toward, you pull your mind out of fear and place it into purpose. Every thought that supports your growth is a thought worth choosing. Every thought that takes you closer to your future is a thought worth nurturing. Redirecting your mind gives you the ability to choose those thoughts deliberately. Over time, your brain learns this new pattern. Instead of wasting time on mental loops, it begins searching automatically for clarity, solutions, and strength. You become more grounded, more confident, and more emotionally secure. You stop living in your head and start living in your life. The power of redirection is the power to reclaim your mind, your energy, and your peace. When you master this, you no longer fear your thoughts, you guide them. Overthinking is not only a mental pattern, it is an emotional reaction. It comes from worry, fear, doubt, and the need for control. You overthink because a part of you is trying to protect yourself from pain, rejection, uncertainty, or failure. But the more you try to protect yourself by thinking endlessly, the more anxious you become. The mind tries to solve feelings with thoughts, and that is where the cycle becomes exhausting. To truly stop overthinking, you must learn to regulate your emotional response, because when your emotions are calm, your thoughts naturally become calm. When your emotions are grounded, your mind becomes clear. And this shift begins with learning how to trust yourself again. Self-trust is the antidote to overthinking. When you trust yourself, you stop rehearsing conversations in your head. You stop questioning every decision. You stop replaying your mistakes like a broken record. You stop worrying about how others perceive you. You stop feeling the need to control every outcome. You stop living in fear. Overthinking thrives where self-trust is weak, and it fades where self-trust grows strong. This is why rewiring your emotional response is not just helpful, it is essential. The first step in building self-trust is learning how to calm your nervous system. When your emotions are heightened, your brain switches into survival mode. And survival mode does not think clearly. It reacts, it panics, it tries to analyze every possibility. But when you calm your body, your brain receives the signal that you are safe. And when your brain feels safe, it stops overthinking. Simple practices can create this shift, like slow breathing, grounding exercises, or placing your hand over your heart and reminding yourself that you are okay. These actions may seem small, but they are powerful because they send a message to your brain that you are not in danger. This breaks the emotional pressure that fuels overthinking. The next step is learning to sit with your feelings without letting them control your mind. Many people overthink because they are afraid to feel. They fear disappointment. They fear uncertainty. They fear being wrong. They fear being hurt. And instead of allowing themselves to feel, they think to avoid emotions. But the truth is, emotions lose power when you face them directly. When you allow yourself to feel fear, it begins to soften. When you allow yourself to feel sadness, it begins to heal. When you allow yourself to feel uncertainty, you begin to adapt. When you feel your emotions instead of resisting them, your mind stops trying to analyze them. This alone rewires your emotional response. Another essential part of emotional rewiring is choosing compassion over criticism. Overthinkers often judge themselves harshly. They replay their mistakes, punish themselves for their imperfections, and expect unrealistic levels of perfection. This creates inner tension, and tension feeds overthinking. But when you approach yourself with compassion, you create emotional safety. You allow room for mistakes without spiraling. You allow room for growth without anxiety. You allow room for uncertainty without panic. Compassion becomes a soft landing for your thoughts, helping you respond to yourself with patience instead of pressure. Finally, rewiring your emotional response requires trusting that you can handle life even when it does not go according to plan. Overthinking is rooted in the fear of losing control, but life does not obey control. Life unfolds. It challenges. It teaches. And the more you accept this, the more your emotional system relaxes. You begin to trust your ability to adapt, your strength to recover, and your inner wisdom to make good decisions. When you trust yourself, overthinking becomes unnecessary. Your emotions become balanced. Your mind becomes steady, and peace becomes your default state instead of anxiety. Your brain to stop overthinking is not achieved through a single breakthrough or one powerful realization. True transformation happens through small, consistent actions practiced every day. The brain learns through repetition, and the habits you follow daily create the mental state you live in. If your daily habits invite chaos, distraction, and anxiety, your mind will become louder, busier, and heavier. But if your daily habits invite clarity, intention, and calmness, your mind begins to shift into a new pattern, a pattern of peace, focus, and confidence. This is why creating a daily routine that strengthens your mental clarity is essential for permanently breaking the cycle of overthinking. Your brain becomes what you feed it every day. If you wake up and immediately rush into noise, if you check your phone before you check in with yourself, if you start your day with stress instead of stillness, your mind becomes reactive. It becomes overwhelmed. It becomes scattered. But when you begin your day with intention, with presence, and with peace, your mental foundation becomes strong. You set a tone for your entire day. You create emotional stability that carries you through your challenges instead of collapsing under them. One of the most powerful daily habits for mental clarity is practicing stillness in the morning. Even just 5 minutes of quiet breathing, reflection, or mindfulness can shift your entire mindset. When you give your mind space before the world demands your attention, you begin to lead your day instead of letting the day lead you. This simple habit trains your brain to stay calm, to stay centered, and to stay grounded, no matter what happens later. You build emotional strength before stepping into the noise of life. Another essential habit is journaling your thoughts. Writing is not just expression, it is organization. When your thoughts stay in your head, they feel tangled, confusing, and overwhelming. But when you put them on paper, they become clearer. You separate what matters from what does not. You identify your fears, your goals, your patterns, and your triggers. Journaling rewires your brain because it turns your thoughts into something you can understand instead of something you drown in. It brings order to the chaos and clarity to the confusion. Daily habits that strengthen your mind also include protecting your focus. Overthinking thrives when your attention is scattered. But when you focus on one thing at a time, one task, one goal, one moment, you reduce the mental noise dramatically. You teach your brain to stay present. You teach your mind to stop jumping into the future or replaying the past. Focus is not about forcing concentration. It is about simplifying your attention. You do less at once so you can think more clearly. You create structure, boundaries, and intentionality. Your mind becomes sharper, calmer, and more efficient. Another powerful part of your daily routine is reducing unnecessary noise because your environment shapes your mind. Too much drama, too much negativity, too much social comparison, too much information. These all fuel overthinking. When you clean your mental environment, your brain becomes lighter. When you remove toxic influences, your mind becomes brighter. When you choose what you allow into your space, your thoughts become cleaner. Protecting your peace is not selfish, it is essential. Lastly, building a daily habit of self-kindness strengthens your mental clarity more than anything else. Many people overthink because they are hard on themselves. They criticize their every move. They expect perfection. They worry about disappointing others. But when you treat yourself with patience, compassion, and gentleness, you build emotional safety within yourself. You teach your mind that mistakes are not threats, that uncertainty is not danger, and that imperfection is not failure. Self-kindness builds inner stability, and inner stability prevents overthinking from taking over your life. When these habits become part of your daily routine, your brain begins to change, overthinking becomes weaker, clarity becomes natural, peace becomes familiar. You start living with intention instead of fear. You start thinking with purpose instead of panic. You create a mind that works for you, not against you. And day by day, step by step, your entire inner world transforms. In the end, breaking free from overthinking is not about becoming a different person. It's about remembering the power you already carry within you. Every moment of awareness, every breath you take with intention, every small action you choose over fear becomes a turning point that rewires your mind for clarity, peace, and strength. You are not trapped in your thoughts. You are simply learning how to guide them instead of letting them guide you. The path to a calmer mind is built on daily choices, choosing presence over panic, choosing truth over imagination, choosing movement over mental noise, choosing compassion over self-criticism. And slowly, these choices reshape the architecture of your brain. They turn chaos into order, fear into understanding, hesitation into confidence. Remember this, your thoughts are powerful, but you are more powerful. Your mind may try to pull you backward, but your intention can lead you forward. You have the ability to interrupt old patterns, to create new habits, and to build a life where peace is not an accident. It is a practice. If you give yourself even 30 minutes a day to apply these principles, you won't just stop overthinking, you'll rise above it. You'll become the kind of person who lives with clarity, acts with purpose, and trusts themselves deeply. And that is how your entire life begins to shift, not someday, but starting now.